remember when all the churches in town got together on the 5th Sunday of any month and had Joy Night? Each church brought a special song, and then we mixed in worship songs, and the roof was raised as we blasted out our praise as one church in Tillamook.
Yes. Remember when, and most of you probably won't remember this, but in the 1950s, our church had big Sunday school contests with Eugene First Church. And you wouldn't think that Tillamook and Eugene were on the same level, but I'm sure if you talk to old-time Tillamook people, they would say we won. I don't know about Eugene.
So when we moved here in 1979, there was a little old lady named Grammy Wisner, who was in charge of the church nursery. Grammy belonged to the WCTU, the Women's Christian Temperance Union. And at least once a year, she had a dedication ceremony for babies in the nursery in which she tied a white ribbon around the child's wrist, and the parents pledged to keep their homes and lives alcohol-free.
Remember that?
Remember when Lori, Lloydine, and Sherilyn, raise your hand, Sherilyn, went out to buy an on-sale baby grand piano. We played it and it sounded horrible. So they did a bait and switch, and we switched to a full price one on the spot because of the sound. Ooh la la la. It's the one we still have. We sold homemade piano keys painted white with little black on it. And it was like selling a brick. You got a piano key to put on your refrigerator if you did that. And that's how we raised money for that piano.
Remember when you all went to camp? So camp has been really important for this church for years, and we still have an annual pie auction which raises thousands of dollars every year to help every kid who wants to. Camp is way more expensive now than it used to be. So we want to make sure everybody can go that wants to go. So camp.
Okay, way back in the day, we had about 60 people in our church choir. Bonnie Stalder, one of our gifted choir members, decided that just having an annual Christmas cantata was much too mundane. She decided we would do a pageant and organize backgrounds, props. Every choir member was dressed in the Jewish traditional garb, and we told the Christmas story in action, word, and song. It was a huge production. Bonnie moved away. It was never done again.
Remember when we all worked in the ice cream booth at the fair? Betty led the charge for, they argued the daughter-mother, 35, 40 years, we're not sure, but over 30 years we ran that booth. 8 to 10 people per shift, totally about 80 people every year. Money's going toward many big projects in our church bands, for instance, that benefited us and benefited the community therefore.
And it's not the same anymore. Remember when we had breakfast cooked for us every Sunday morning? It was called the Sun Club. And Kenny and Edith Nodaboom headed that up with helpers, and if you've ever heard the song Easy Like Sunday Morning, you all know they're not singing that to Christians. Sunday morning is not easy, but it made it easier for all of us because we didn't have to worry about feeding our kids. We just showed up in time to eat.
And go to Sunday school. Very important. Still important, yeah. Okay, a fellow pastor in our town, Dean Chris, recalls a conversation he had with Paul Barber, who is one of our former pastors, when Paul and Marie moved to town to become our pastors. Paul told Dean, "I can come here to just relax and coast into retirement, or I can put the foot to the gas pedal." Obviously, Pastor Paul pushed the gas, helped design, oversee, raise funds for, and complete the building addition that you are now sitting in today.
remember when we had women's retreat up at Belknap Hot Springs? We take over the entire lodge. We had great speakers. We swam in the pool fed by hot springs, and we cooked our own phenomenal food. And we produced the best evening entertainment I've seen ever. Raise your hand if you were in evening entertainment ever.
Oh yeah.
Oh, there's more of you than that, I know. Anyway, it was a wonderful time.
Okay, if you live here, you may not go to the beach very often, like my family, but if you were a part of the Labor Day picnic, you went to the beach at least one time a year.
Right.
And we enjoyed that so much. It was a huge potluck. The kids played on the cliffs, and the men and the teens played football on the beach. It was a great time.
John Begin. Some of you will remember John Begin.
Yeah.
His son and family come to our church. John had a heart for recovery. Marie Barber had heard of a program called Celebrate Recovery. Pastor Paul had just completed his foot to the pedal building of this church edition. It all combined into the needed vision, the needed tool, and the needed space to launch Celebrate Recovery in May of 2006. Celebrate Recovery changed the culture of our church.
Are you ready, Betty? Are you ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
Okay, stand up, even though they can't tell that you're standing up. Okay, remember when Betty Shield would dress up as Sunday School Charlie? And there's a picture right there. And it was, she told me about 4 weeks, and actually I looked at YouTube, they still do it now, where she'd do a cliffhanger all 4 weeks. And Sunday School Charlie was in trouble, and then he got saved and rescued. And she would dress up in that costume right there on her chest. And then right next to it is her Sunday school pin. A pin was for good attendance for 1 year. The wreath around the pin was for another year. And then after that, she has things hanging down.
Just aid I have all together.
And this is a side note I didn't write down, but I remember her saying that on vacation they had to go to Sunday school every time they were on vacation because they needed to get those pins.
Hated it.
Actually, our mandatory Sunday school attendance was because of Caravan. So who remembers Caravan?
Woo!
Caravan was a Christian scouting program that we had at our church that ran for years on Wednesday nights, and that is where we all learned about Phineas F. Brzee. We probably wouldn't know about him, the founder of the Nazarene Church, had it not been for Caravan. And I'm proud to say that my son, Ryan Lewis, got the Phineas F. Brzee Award. I will say that we didn't have, they only did Caravan for 2nd through 6th grade, so Lloydine invented Chippewas, which was for the 4, 5, and 6-year-olds.
We come from yonder hill. We love Jesus, and we always will.
We have our own very politically incorrect
We had a resident electrician by the name of Steve White. Steve was a hard-working church board member, loving husband to Dee, and loving father to his 3 children. Steve worked tirelessly to build the church addition and worked on the electrical up until a very short time before he died. He literally died with his boots on. The space you're sitting in now has been lovingly named to honor this outstanding man of God. I want to recall Steve White.
Remember when the choir sang a special every Sunday, and it was called A Special, and did Christmas and Easter cantatas every year, and it eventually led to a big fancy Christmas dinner in this room, built by the man, where we celebrated Christmas by singing our cantata right here and having wonderful, wonderful dinner.
And before we could put the sheetrock on these walls, we did a scripture signing on all of the interior walls. If the church ever, for some reason, gets torn down, or you can come and still find those scriptures, I'm thinking, that'll be inside every wall.
And we have to mention our Mexico mission trips. Stuart got the bug in 1984 when he went on a mission trip to Mexico with his home church in Beaverton. And ever since then, Stuart has been leading a yearly trek to Mexico to build homes, facilities, and minister to the people there. 38 years and counting.
Okay, remember when Alan Mortimer, pastor from 1986 to 1996, played Tevye in the community-produced Kappa play, Fiddler on the Roof? And he perfected his Tevye dance. I can't even do it. He can actually do it better than the guy that did it on TV.
Right.
Our church was big into music in the past days as far as choirs, both adult and children. So with the adult choirs, we had choir robes that were for some reason very important then, and they were blue, and we had sashes, and everybody had their own choir robe, and it was a big deal to take care of those. Leola Stiver was a huge person that did that. Also, we had a children's choir, which I told you about my own stellar son who got the Phineas F. Bursey, also got kicked out of children's choir. And Ileana Hartman, they've made all of those robes here we're in the fellowship hall, sewed up with big giant red bows, and we look like a real classic children's choir.
That was called Kids Under Construction, by the way. Okay. Remembering a mission trip to Costa Rica with several of our men who are even here right now. I think it was in 1991. Oh, I got a nod from Rick Nealon, that's the date, I guessed. Who, they not only helped build a mission church, but they experienced a total solar eclipse.
Remember when we had Sunday?
Oh,
On
yeah.
Sunday night after evening church, we couldn't remember whether it was it the first Sunday? Anyway, after evening
matter,
church,
we were here.
that should be a remembrance, evening church.
Oh, yeah.
We had hot dogs, ice cream sundaes, and root beer or Coke floats, I can't remember which.
A sad period in our church was 1992 when the church was lit on fire. I don't know how many of you remember that. How many of you do remember that when the church burned? It was between Palm Sunday and Easter Sunday. A couple brought their son to church, and he wasn't one bit happy about it. And after he left church, he vowed to either burn a church down or kill a pastor. Now, we're glad that he chose to just burn the church. So he came in and lit the church on fire, and luckily one of our neighbors down the street noticed it during the night. That was on a Friday. Lit 17 fires. I did not know that. Anyway, one of them, right above the piano, was the most devastating to the sanctuary. And if you next time you're in there, take a look, you can still see a little bit of scarring up on the wood. But on Saturday, the cleaning crews, service master or somebody came in and cleaned the sanctuary as best they could. We didn't want to stop having Easter because of a fire, so we celebrated Easter in the sanctuary. And then after that, when the church was being put back together, we celebrated at the junior high.
Wow. It's a sad time.
Alan, do you remember us getting up on the scaffolding and touching the peak? Yeah, I thought you remember that. Okay. As a church secretary for a few years, one day I came to work and immediately noticed blood on the foyer walls and on the floor. In those days, the church's secretary was, the office was a part of what's the foyer now, and the pastor's office was where the choir room is. Grabbing my scissors, I followed the blood trail. Bloody hands on the sanctuary walls down to where the prayer room is currently. There was the broken window entry point for our offender. Apparently drunk, he broke into our church and a couple of homes in the area until he passed out, bloody and snoring on a neighbor's porch. Police were called. My scissors saw no action.
I forgot one. I have one more that I forgot. How many women remember Frida twirling into our women's retreats with her twirly skirt and all that? That was Ginny Sini who took on a persona, Frida, and it was a highlight of any of our women's events to have Frida arrive.
Yeah.
That's all.
I remember sitting down, Lori and I, and Lloyd D. You know, and what's kind of funny is we were sitting in the old sanctuary in exactly the same space as we sit now.
Yeah.
Funny how that works. Anyways, back on the tile on the floor, and I remember we kind of moved our feet and water started coming up. And that was kind of the first indication that something was amiss with the boiler and all the water heating system underneath the floor, which led then to obviously us moving from there over to here to hold service and the whole capital campaign project. So Josh, if you would come on up and kind of wrap things up here. We obviously have completed that capital campaign project and are ready to move into the next wonderful phase of this church.
Thank you, Bruce. So yeah, obviously my time with you over the last 4 years, I remember coming here and most of you were probably wondering, okay, what's this young guy going to do? And I was thinking the exact same thing. I had no idea, but I knew I was going to figure it out because God could help me figure other things out. And so we went through the capital campaign project, and if I remember right, there was close to 80 people involved in the various capital campaign teams playing a part in the fundraising and the design and all of the different pieces that went into that project. I remember us getting all of the pledges that would be pledged to be debt-free in 3 years and how exciting that was. And then 2 months later, we finally broke ground because they were a little bit late, as often happens. And then 2 weeks after we break ground, this thing called COVID hits. And suddenly prices started expanding and we were told we couldn't hold service and I was terrified. I remember talking to the board, what do we do? Do we pull the plug? Do we keep going forward? And we said, you know what? God knows what's going on. We went through the pledge. We've done everything. Let's just go forward. And obviously, it was the right decision. We've now held multiple memorial services in that space, weddings in that space, numerous baptisms. Some of you have been baptized in that space since then. People have accepted Jesus in that space. Lives have been transformed in that space. And that's really what makes it so special. It's not that it's just the building, but it's the things that happen when God's Spirit interacts with us in that space. That is our home where we go and worship God. And we believe that for generations to come, that's going to continue. And so I want to say thank you for being who you are. Thank you for being such an incredible church. I want you to know, before Dr. Graves left, he said, I'm not just telling you this, Josh. He said 2 things you need to know. This church loves you. And this is the friendliest church I've ever been in my entire life. And that's saying something. He said, just coming in the door, I had 3 different people introduce themselves to me. A little girl, he said, who talks to adults? A little girl comes up and introduces herself to me. Hi, I'm Addison. You know, and he's like, everybody was just so genuine and so friendly. And he said, this church is special. It's very evident God's Spirit is in this church, and He's got something very impressive planned to do in and through this church and through these people. And so again, looking back over the last 110 years, I think what we need to remember is right now, we stand at a place where we stand on the shoulders of those who have gone before us. They've handed us the baton, and now it's our opportunity to say, what do we do from here? Where are we going to go from here? How are we going to have an impact on the generations that come? And all of the kids running around and laughing and playing, let's make sure that they grow up knowing how much God loves them and knowing what it means to honor and follow God. Let's make sure that our community knows the source of our hope the source of our joy, the source of our freedom. Let's be bold and confident because we know Scripture says we are more than conquerors. We have a lot of work to do. God has called us, He's equipped us, He's gifted us, He's prepared us. And now it's our opportunity to go and make God's dreams a reality. And so thank you for being a part of this church. Thank you for loving and accepting my family and I. And thank you for being with us in whatever it is God has in store for the future. God bless. I love you guys. And feel free, get some more cake and just enjoy yourselves.